Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2210. The topic is mindset, and the title is Bend Before You Break. I have a client who is really pushing very hard for fat loss. She's not like, I wouldn't ever say that she's excessively overweight. I think she's maybe like just 20 pounds, like over where she really wants to be, but she's struggled for a long time, 10 plus years, to be happy with her body. She's always went back and forth between kind of being skinny, soft, and then just overweight. She's never found that healthy balance. So our approach has been trying to teach her how to self-manage her calories and avoid extremes. So right now, her calorie range is 1,300 to 1,800 calories. Her goal is to, on days she wants to push for greater fat loss, she can go down towards the 1,300. On days where she maybe needs extra recovery, there's chaos happening in the day, she's traveling, but she still wants to make progress, she can go up towards the 1,800. So 1,800 is still lower than her maintenance calories, her estimated maintenance calories, but 1,300 is higher than like what would be an unhealthy amount that would start to cause the body to fight against the process. So for a while, she's been pushing between 1,300 to 1,400 calories. Now, she's been doing that, it was like 12, 13, 14 days in a row, and I was like, oof, you might be going a little too long. So I said, I want you to look out for these warning signs. So I listed what she's going to start to experience, and I wanted her to know, okay, you have the freedom to choose this, but, we might be going down a little slippery slope. I want you to be aware of what might happen. Now, in her journal, she kept saying, okay, I'll let you know, or I got it, it was always these confirmational phrases. And then just this morning, I got the following message. I'm a bad client. You told me this would happen, and I know you wouldn't say you told me so, but ... you did. Last night I ordered takeout and ended up eating 3 cheeseburgers from Five Guys. I didn't even look at the calories in MFP, which is MyFitnessPal, because I'm pretty certain it put me over my 1,800 calories for the day, considering one burger is probably 1,800 calories. I'm sorry. And now I have to ask the question of shame, what can I do to correct this? Also, it's totally understandable if you want to chew me out for a bit before giving me that answer. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, she's not a bad client. And second of all, she doesn't have to apologize to me. She has to apologize to herself, which is far worse. But we got all the nice things, all the happy stuff out of the way. And what I wanted to, like what I shared with her and what I want to share in today's podcast is a helpful mindset that I told her I wanted her to use going forward is to bend before you break. She felt this coming. I know she did because she's not immune to being a human being. She had to have felt this coming. So she was pushing and pushing and pushing. Her body was starting to feel like crap. She started getting more hunger pains. Her workout energy was down. Her daily energy was down. Her mood was down. All of the signs of the body being too severely in a deficit were there. But instead of bending a little, meaning going up in her range, she kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where she broke. Instead, it's better to stay in our range, but allow for a few high days. So that way, our overall trend is still successful. It doesn't help us if we have a couple days at 1,300 and then one day at 4,000. That's not going to be what will lead to long-term success. We want to stay within the healthy range, but it's okay to be lower, it's okay to be higher, it's okay to be anywhere in that range. So if we're low, and we're like, oh man, I'm just kind of feeling like crappy, feeling low motivation today, you know what, let me go ahead and go higher in the range. Could I push another day? Probably, but I don't want to break. I don't want to end up eating, a bunch of Five Guys cheeseburgers. Let me bend a little bit and go higher in the range today so I can keep myself on track. So I wrote back to her. I said, a Five Guys cheeseburger is 840 calories. That way she knows. So if you had a good breakfast and lunch, and for her normal kind of calorie portion sizes are somewhere around 500 calories. So if she had a 500 calorie breakfast, 500 calorie lunch, she would have actually had the clearance to have a Five Guys cheeseburger at dinner if she wanted. So she could have only had one, but actually they're really good, and one is plenty to appease a craving. So she was really craving it, but she caught it early. If she was willing to bend before she broke, she could have actually had a Five Guys cheeseburger and still hit her daily calories. She might have been right at like the 1800, maybe a little over. So maybe it was a day of just kind of holding our weight, not really a day of fat loss, but it wouldn't have messed us up for multiple days. It wouldn't have messed her up mentally. It wouldn't have caused this extreme yo-yo, crazy, psycho, mental, emotional, stressful moment. Just bending a little, if it prevents us from breaking, is a great, great choice. I said then you could have had a string of a couple low days. In the end of the week, the net deficit for the week would still have been successful. So when you feel yourself, this is for you now, the listener, when you feel yourself about to break, bend. If when you bend, it causes you to break. So if somebody's like, well, I took your approach and I had the Five Guys cheeseburger, but I just lost my mind and ordered the fries and the milkshake as well. Well, that's a sign that you waited too long. So now that you did that, now that you ate a bunch of food and you're like, I feel like a piece of crap and now I'm going to go crazy low. No, don't do it again. Stay within your range. But if before this bending that turned into a brokenness, before this moment, let's say you pushed for 3 weeks and then you finally tried to have a little bit and you lost your mind. Well, next time, just go a couple days, just 3 or 4 days, and then have a little bit of a treat. Another 3 or 4 days, have a little bit of a treat. So Meredith and I do this all the time, and we actually have a new thing I've mentioned a couple times, is we started mixing Core Power with a sugar-free Jell-O. It ends up being 270 calories in total, and it's actually a pretty good, like, pint-size, like, fake ice cream, but it's actually really good. That is 270 calories. That fits well within a range of 1,300 to 1,800 calories. So if somebody ate to 1,300 for the day, and then right before, like at night, they're like, you know what, I'm going to have one of those little ice cream things that Rob talks about. I'm going to go from 1,300 now to 1,570. I'm still a successful day. But I got the sense of having something delicious and fun, and it was a sweet treat. Maybe I do it again the next night. Maybe I do it again the next night. But now all of a sudden, after 3 nights of having it, I'm like, okay, it's good, but I'm kind of ready. Like, let me go one day without it. What you'll start to find is that if you stay in your target range, but you allow for bending, like going higher in the range, you'll actually have days where you choose to go low in the range and you want that challenge because you know you could go higher if you wanted to. And you did a couple times, but now you're like, well, let me have a really good day. I'm just going to want to push today. I'll have the treat tomorrow. That's the mindset we want to get to, is we can have it if we want it, but we don't really feel like we want it all the time. That's actually a healthy balance of bending and not breaking. So if you find that every time you try to have a little bit, you have too much, you're going for too long in between those little bits. You're going for too long between the freedom. You might need to shorten those gaps to just, day on, day off, day on, day off. So 1,300, then 1,800, then 1,300, then 1,800. Or you can have 1,300, then 3 days of 1,800 in a row. And what you'll find is by the 4th day, you're like, I don't really want 1,800 anymore. I'd rather see what my abs look like. I'd rather see what my thigh looks like without this saddlebag. I want to see one butt instead of 2 butts. So you'll start to find that you'll choose the hope of progress over the higher calories. And that's when you're in a healthy mindset. So it's okay to bend if it saves you from breaking. And again, if when you bend you break, that means you've waited too long. So your goals that you want, like in order for you to be truly successful, you cannot reach the results you want and sustain the results you want with an all or nothing mindset, with an all or nothing approach, with a I'm going to eat at the bottom of the range and crush myself to death. And then once I'm finally lean, then what? What are you going to do? You're going to lose your damn mind and you're going to overeat and get right back to where you were. Let's not do that. Let's stop the yo-yo shit and all the stuff that, like, here I am 5 years later working on the same damn goal I was trying to do 5 years ago because I keep trying all this stupid extreme shit that isn't working. Stop doing it in extremes. For the rest of your life, you're likely going to want to have a body that you feel proud of. Take your time. What you'll find is, if you take this bend, don't break approach for, say, 2 years, the week-to-week, the month-to-month results might be slow, but in 2 years, you'll reach your goal, and then you can just maintain that, and you get to be happy for the rest of your life. Rather than, I'm going to push super hard for 3 to 6 months, then lose my mind for 3 to 6 months, and repeat that for 4 years, and then all of a sudden it's been a decade, and I'm still unhappy. Extreme efforts cause extreme consequences. Let's narrow down that extreme a little bit. Let's be willing to bend from time to time so it prevents us from breaking, so it prevents us from just totally quitting. Right? A bend before you break mindset and approach can be sustained long term. So that's something I would recommend. So that's what I wrote out for that client. We're going to give that a go, see how she does. But I thought that would be a good lesson to share in today's podcast. If you have any questions, if you need anything, let me know. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people you share it with, the more people can help. If you like the podcast, you can consider donating to support the podcast. You can do a straight donation on our website, or you can also go to Nutricost.com. It's a supplement store. I've been using their supplements for over 10 years. You can use the code BrutalIron10 for a 10% discount. And then we get a 10% commission on anything you buy. So you get great supplements at a cheaper price, and a little bit of the money comes back to us. So that's a donation if you'd like to do it that way. And then if you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.